So when I was growing up in our little country church, we did these things every once in a while. They called them Youth Sunday. Somebody might remember those back in the day. And so pastor would let the youth do the whole service. Now, what did that mean? Well, that meant that like one of us would lead the singing and back, stand behind that wooden pulpit, and it might be like this on you, depending on how old you were, and you would tell everybody what number in the hymnal to turn to, and then just kind of look at the pianist and go along with them. Then somebody would take up the offering, and they would come up and they would pray over the offering, and we would have teenagers that would then be the ushers. And then one of the teenagers would get to preach. Man, oh man, oh man. Now let me say, we haven't done anything like that here since we've been here. And I want you to know that we believe in teenagers. I mean, Mariah's on the worship team doing a good job, right? We look forward to the day there's more teenagers here. We got a teenager doing slides today. I mean, we even had teenagers do ushers, though I do sometimes have to remind Howard, they make good ushers too. And I'm not opposed to a teenager preaching. I mean, woo. Anyway, in May of 1983, I was 14 years old. I got my first time to preach. Woo! I remember what I preached on. I preached on end times. That's crazy. Not that the Lord was using a 13-year-old, but that I was like, I don't recommend that be anybody's first sermon. I'm just telling you. I mean, goodness gracious. We didn't even have the Left Behind stuff yet. I mean, honestly, I was probably inspired because we had been, in our youth group, we had watched those old A Thief in the Night movies, and they weren't on VHS yet. They were on click, 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 the real thing. Some of you younger people really think, Pastor Tim, you're really showing your age. I turned 54 yesterday. I'm not that old. And I don't know how to behave because I've never been this age before. Okay? I just haven't. But that was a significant day in my life. I would say that it was, in that little country church, I gave my very first altar call. And 11 people responded to receive Jesus. A 40-year-old guy did. I mean, it was something. I remember laying in bed that night and sensing the Lord talking to me about a life of ministry, in vocational ministry. And that's a night that my life shifted directions. It changed. I think it's important. I just want to say something right now, and I'm going to say it to teenagers, most of whom are sitting over here, but I want everybody, because it applies to everybody. God's trying to speak to you. Slow down and listen. Turn off your devices and listen. Now, I will say, I didn't use the phrase, you notice, for some of you that have been around, I didn't say I felt the Lord telling me I was called to preach. As a matter of fact, I had a plan when God, I wanted to do Christian music. Matter of fact, I really wanted to be a Christian rock and roller. That's why I started learning guitar, and we were talking yesterday about how I used to have long hair. Woo, come on, shake it all out. That was me, man. I was that guy. But my plan for honoring God wasn't the same as God's plan for how I should best follow and honor Him. And eventually I figured out that if I take whatever gifts and skills that God has given me and I put them to work wherever and whenever He asked me to, in the thing He's asking me to, that's a much better plan than the plan I had. Amen. And it led us here to today. It's Today we're going to be continuing our series, Crossing Over. 2 weeks ago we talked about crossing over to faith and how life is one intersection after another, where we're faced with the choice of stepping into faith or not. Then we also saw last week that talked about crossing over to community and how crossing over to community is actively sharing the journey. Now, if you missed those two, you can go back in, you can check them out on the website, you can look at them on YouTube or Facebook. But today we're going to see through the life of Moses that Jesus is also asking us to cross over to purpose. Cross over to purpose. I want to just again say, if you joined us online or here, if you haven't met me, my name is Tim Ware. My wife Rachel and I have the privilege of being the lead pastors here at Crossing Place. And I want you guys to know something. We prayed for you today. And we've asked the Lord to speak to you personally, right where you are. Let's just pray over the rest of our service. Father, I thank you for your goodness. Father, we thank you that you are worthy. We thank you that you're the miracle-working God, and we can believe for it. And Lord, I thank you that you have a purpose, not just for me, but for all of us. Lord, speak to us today. In Jesus' name, amen. Before we go any further, I'd like us to read our theme verse for the series out loud together. So here we go. On the count of three, let's read this from Joshua 1:9. 1, 2, 3. Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Now, we've been walking through the life of Moses, and I'm going to have to... I got to tell you, we're not going to get all the way to the end of his life. We're just not. It's okay, though. Today, we're going to be in Exodus chapter 31. So if you've got your Bible or you've got your device and you like to follow along, you got time. That gives you time to find it. In our first week, we looked at what the Bible records as Moses' first real encounter with God in Exodus chapter 3 and verse 4. And last week, we saw him up on the mountaintop with Aaron and Hur and the whole Amalekite thing going on. And so some of you may be wondering, if you haven't read his story, what happens between chapter 17 and chapter 31? Well, I'm about to tell you. So, the first thing that happens when you get there is the next thing that happens after the Amalekites is Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, shows up and he brings his family. I guess they thought, you're going back to Egypt and they may try and kill you. The wife and kids should stay with dad. So this is like a family reunion moment. We're all getting back together, hugs, kisses, snuggles, all that stuff. And then the next day, they're kind of looking around, and Jethro's watching this emerging leadership thing that's happening with this Israel group and Moses, and then all of a sudden you see Jethro go, this isn't good. And so he gives his son-in-law some phenomenal leadership advice. And then they head on, and they end up at Mount Sinai or Mount Horeb. Now, and if you remember from our first time, there was this moment when Moses is talking to the Lord, and the Lord says, this is how you'll know that I called you to do this, because you'll lead those people right back here to worship. Matter of fact, it said in Exodus chapter 3, verse 12, it said, I will be with you, and this will be a sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. And in Exodus 19, they get back to the mountain. Clouds and stuff surround the top of the mountain to show that the Lord is showing up. The people see it. Then the Lord asks Moses to go up on the top of the mountain. And he does. He's up there for a long time. He's up there for quite a while. He's up there so long that the people rebel against God, and they have that whole golden calf thing that takes place. But anyway, so when he's on the mountain, the Lord is giving Moses the Jewish law. But in Exodus 31, the Lord diverts from the do's and the don'ts, and he talks to Moses about the resources that he's provided. And let's pick it up in Exodus chapter 31, verse 1. It says, then the Lord said to Moses, see, I have chosen Bezalel, there's a name for you, son of Uri, the son of Hur, the guy from last week, of the tribe of Judah, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with skill and ability and knowledge of all kinds of crafts. He says, to make artistic designs for work in gold, silver, and bronze, and the cuts to set stones, and to work in wood, and engage in all kinds of craftsmanship. Moreover, I have appointed Oholiab. That's an even better name right there. Oholiab to the son of, this one I'm not even going to try, of that guy with an A's name, from the tribe of Dan, to help him. Also, I have given skill to all the craftsmen to make everything that I have commanded you. I love this part of the story. I mean, I like to work with my hands. I like to do that kind of stuff. And it's really cool that the Lord says that I have given those skills as gifts by my Spirit. Jeremiah 1:5, the Lord said, before I formed you in the womb, oh man, before you were born, I set you apart. I set you apart. When I look at the life of Moses, I think that the Lord would have said the same thing about Moses that he said about Jeremiah. Matter of fact, when I read in the Bible about the life of David, I think the Lord would have said the same thing about David that he said about Jeremiah. Again and again, I see this pattern in the Scripture. I mean, isn't that the same thing that we just read? Because didn't he say, I have chosen Bezalel and Oholiab? In the Living Bible, it says, I have appointed. Sounds a whole lot like I've set them apart. And even more than just seeing that pattern there, I've seen that pattern in life. In 54 years of walking the earth, and this is going to make me really sound old. 40? Oh, Jesus. 46 of them following Jesus. I've seen that he sets people apart all over the place. And he sets you guys apart. Every one of you. He sets you apart. Now, set you apart, what's he chosen you for? That's a whole nother question. It is. But crossing over to purpose doesn't require us to know the answer to that question, because crossing over to purpose is using our gifts to honor the Lord. Up to this point in their life, Bezalel and Oholiab and all those other craftsmen, you realize that most of their lives they have been slaves. And it was under slavery that they actually honed the skills that they were going to use in this moment. I think it's important for us to know that, because and also to realize that if you read the rest of the story, they actually get the job done. They get the tabernacle built. But here's the question that I kept going through my mind this week. Was that the end? Did they say, okay, I'm retired. I've done my thing. Had they fulfilled their purpose when they finished the tabernacle? You know, we tend to define purpose as a one thing. This is that thing that I was born to do, that I'm supposed to do. This is the one thing. If I do it all my life. Now, I want to geek out for a minute. Y'all know me a little bit by now, and this might help some of you teenagers. But I want you to know that recent research says that as those of us parents and grandparents, we put extra stress, not just on our teenagers, but even now our little kids, because we constantly want to find out, help them discover what they're going to do with their life. But researchers tell us that only 27% of college graduates work in a field connected to their degree. That ain't very many. That's not at all. And then here's another stat for these about college, that they say that 80% of college students change their major at least once. The average college student changes their major 3 times. Now, y'all think that's just because kids are unsettled. But did you know that that those same researchers tell us that the average adult from high school graduate, from whatever graduation, entering the workforce to retirement, changes their careers 3 to 7 times. And many of you know, not changing their job, but they change their career. And many of you go, yeah, that's been my life. That's been my story. See, here's the thing. These statistics tell us that when we're searching for the one thing that we're passionate about, we're gifted about, that we can do for our entire life, we're probably not going to find it. Because God doesn't define our purpose by the one thing. Matter of fact, if we only do the one thing, can I tell you something? Sorry, this isn't in my notes, but this is just going to be a Jesus moment for us back there. If we only try to do one thing, we limit the growth of God in our life. Guys, purpose is not about one thing. Crossing over to purpose is about using our gifts to honor the Lord. So let's look back at the text again. It says, see, I have chosen Bezalel. Then we'll skip down and it says, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God. I love that. With skill, ability, and knowledge in all kinds of crafts. Oh, man. To make artistic designs for work in gold, silver, bronze, to cut and set stone, to work in wood, and engage in all kinds of craftsmanship. The Lord chose and created Bezalel with the purpose of making artistic designs for working gold, silver, bronze, to cut and set stones, to work in wood, and to engage in all kinds of craftsmanship. It doesn't say that he chose him to make the tabernacle. Oh, it doesn't. Now, okay, all right. It's likely that the tabernacle is going to end up being the biggest thing in their life that they do, that it moves the kingdom forward, because we're talking about it today. Like thousands of years later. But when we get to heaven, we can ask. But we don't know. But crossing over to purpose is about using our gifts to honor the Lord. Because when we see our purpose as one thing, then our purpose, or maybe we could even say our value, is limited to whether or not we do that one thing or not. In the Bible, in the Old Testament, we can read the story of Esther. And the most famous line from that story is this, and who knows but that you have come to the royal position for such a time as this. First of all, that is a question. That is not a statement. But we tend to, in the church, preach it and teach it like it's a statement. We've taught for years like this was why she became queen. Now, like Bezalel and them, it might just have been the biggest thing, her biggest impact moment on the kingdom, because we're still talking about it today, and they still celebrate Purim, but we actually don't know a whole lot about her whole life. And it would be unfair to her to pass that kind of judgment without all of the information. And the other problem with seeing the story that way is that it puts pressure on us, because our whole life is, the whole success and failure of our life is, did we do the one thing? It's a great question. How do you know that this isn't? But you don't, so you have to continue to use your gifts to honor the Lord, because it might be the next one. Rachel's favorite verse in the Bible is Ephesians 2:10. For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Now I want you to notice that it uses the word works. It's got an S on it, not work. We have to remember that crossing over to purpose is using our gifts to honor the Lord for a lifetime, not once, not twice, not just here and there. But it's about the works, not the work. So I was doing this week. I thought, I began to ask the question, I wonder what's going to be the most impactful thing when I get to heaven, impactful thing in my life, where I was releasing my skills and gifts. Was it the 18 years where I was bivocational and I was working at construction and I was in this secular environment all the time sharing my faith? Maybe. Was that my purpose? Was it my time? Was it our 6.5 years as youth pastors? Was it those 2 years when I was 15 and 16 traveling on weekends singing with a gospel quartet? Was it 2 years working in the inner city of Dallas? Was it launching advancement coaching and consulting to help pastors and churches? Is it pastoring Crossing Place? I don't know. But it's not my job to worry about the answer to that question. My job is to use the gifts and skills that the Lord has given me. I'm supposed to use them to honor Him. Now, you may be sitting there today going, well, that's fine, Pastor Tim, because that's you. You've got gifts, you've got skill, and I ain't got none. Well, my old country grandma had a good answer for that. And here's what she'd have said. Hogwash. Some gifts, some purposes, they're easier to know. They're easier to recognize than others. I mean, I'll just be honest with you. And as I was thinking about that fact, I read a story about a truck driver this week that might help us understand. So it's winter and they're up north and he's in the city and he's driving his truck through the city. And he comes to a stoplight and this lady, he sees in the mirror, this lady jumps out of her car and runs up like this, trying not to fall, bangs on his door, and he rolls down the window. She says, "Hi, my name's Heidi, and I've been following you. I just want you to know that you're losing part of your load." And he gives her the thumbs up, rolls window up, light turns green, and they're going down. Next red light, he sees in the mirror, Heidi's getting out of her car and running up there, boom, boom, same thing again. And, okay, yeah, so boom, catch a gear and go down the road. And third red light, he stops, and here comes Heidi. Except for now she's starting to, because we've done this, come on, guy. And he's like, "Come on, woman." And he rolls down the window, and she looks up at him, and he goes, "Hi, my name's Bob, and I'm driving the salt truck to keep the ice off the roads." Not everyone is going to immediately understand your gifts, your skills, the thing you're doing. You may not even understand it. And in all honesty, part of the reason that it's hard to find it is because we as the church haven't done a great job of helping people discover God's purpose. Because we tend to take a very narrow view of it. We ask the question, are you called to be a pastor? Are you called to be a missionary? Or, you're going to be an evangelist. And when we only ask those questions, we forget that Luke, who wrote two books in the New Testament, he was a medical doctor. We forget that Amos, this guy who we got a few chapters of prophecy in the Old Testament, spent his life as a shepherd, not sitting around saying, "Oh, God is speaking to me, come here. Come listen to what Jesus." No, that wasn't it. It's just not. So in today's episode of Confessions from Pastor Tim, I need to tell y'all something. I'm not a big fan of spiritual gifts tests. That's horrible. Now, some of you go, what are you talking about? Well, okay. So in the church world, we organize everything. And in the New Testament, in Romans and 1 Corinthians and Ephesians, there's these lists, and they're the gifts. They're the lists of spiritual gifts. And the list in Romans is the most prominent one used. And you can take a spiritual gifts test, and you can answer the questions, and we're going to check out how you react. We're going to look at your personality, and out of that, we're going to be able to tell you what spiritual gifts you have. Do you have the gift of prophecy? Do you have the gift of mercy? We're going to find out. It's not that I don't believe in spiritual gifts, guys. I absolutely do. But every one of those tests that I've ever seen, not one of them has the gift that was given to Bezalel and Oholiab. See, I believe that the list of gifts is bigger than 9 or 12. It's so big because we serve such a big God. And we have such a big group of humanity. I mean, music can be a great spiritual gift, right? And why am I talking about that? Well, because in the church, we've spent so much time promoting spiritual gifts and gifts given by God in such a narrow way that we've left people out. And I can't find anywhere in Scripture where God left anyone out. We're all gifted in something. And crossing over to purpose is us using our gifts to honor the Lord. Now, the wording in this little phrase is kind of chosen specifically because there are really 3 key words here. There's the word using, there's the word gifts, and there's the word honor. Now, we could talk a lot about gifts. And it's important because no matter your age, you still have a gift that you can use to honor the Lord. Now, the other part of it is, will we use that gift? And when we do use it, will we honor the Lord with how we use it? One of the other gripes I have about spiritual gifts tests is that they, at the end of every one of them, what they do is they say, they always say, oh, this is what ministry you should serve in. This is where you should serve in the church. So last week there was a picture of the Jacksonville Jaguars kicker. He kicked the game-winning field goal and he's holding his cross up. He's trying to honor the Lord the best he can, right? Now they didn't win yesterday, so this is like 7 days ago. Okay, he's giving glory. I mean, he's a gifted kicker. And if you let's just put this in perspective. At the end of the football season, there will be 32 individuals out of the hundreds of millions in the U.S. that were able to say they ended this season as a starting kicker for an NFL team. That's pretty elite air. That means you're pretty gifted at what you got going on. And he might be just a little more gifted than the Cowboys kicker. I mean, those 4 extra points that went wide, I guess we'll find out this afternoon, won't we? Anyway, he was doing his best to honor the Lord by all reports with his gift. But if he came to this church, I walked around here this morning, I was wondering what would kicking a football in this room do for us? I mean, not much. This isn't very long. There's not much. It's pretty short around here. It's just not going to happen. But why do I say that? Because, guys, some of our gifts, and dare I say probably most of the gifts that God gives us, often find their greatest application outside of these walls. That's right. Because when we do them in a way that honors the Lord, they point to Jesus. They don't point to us. Now, if you continue reading in the book of Exodus chapter 32, you find out that Moses' brother Aaron, the one that was talking to him, the one that went with him on the journey, the one that was holding his arms up, he knew how to make things out of gold just like Bezalel. Now, remember I told you earlier that they rebelled against God because he was on the mountain so long, and he was up there so long, they started saying, well, that God up there, We want one like those guys used to have back in Egypt. So they started griping, and Aaron said, well, bring me all your gold, bring me all your gold. And here he makes this golden calf. So let's just look at that. That means he has some of the same gifts as Bezalel. But he didn't use it to honor the Lord. When I take the credit, it doesn't honor the Lord. When I do something that I know is not going to please the Lord, guess what? It doesn't honor the Lord. There are people who are gifted in technology. And you say, can that be a spiritual gift? Yes, because I do not have it. I'm just saying. But some of those people that do, that are out there hacking and stealing and scamming, they're not using it for the Lord. Now, I'm glad that around here we got some people that have the gift. And we have some that have the gift of get her done. Now, y'all don't know what that gift is, but if you don't know what that gift is, I'll just have to show you what it is. Because yesterday, we had Kevin and Jason and Don and Howard and Steve and Marty and Tristan and Dustin up here, and they put up these TVs out, and the one out in the foyer. Come on, that's awesome, right? Yeah. Y'all can say thank you to them for their work. I enjoy hearing about the teenager that said, I ran through the attic. He ran through the attic and didn't fall through the sheetrock. That's a win, baby. Yeah. Anyway. Crossing over to purpose is using our gifts to honor the Lord. It's not just using our gift, but it's honoring the Lord with our gift. If you're a gifted teacher like Rachel, then honor the Lord. If you're a gifted writer like Christine Kohler, then honor the Lord. I could go on and on around the room. Use what the Lord has given you. Just like crossing over to faith and crossing over to community, crossing over to purpose is a choice. You don't have to. You can say no. It's just the reality. Instead, I can promote what I want. I can make it about me, what I can get. Bonnie, would you join me? Now, in a talk like this, I know that it stirs up a lot of questions. What gifts have I been given from the Lord? How do I find out what gifts the Lord has given me? How do I use my gifts to honor the Lord? And I understand that. And those are probably just a few of the questions. And I don't have all the answers. But I can tell you who does. I can also tell you that usually finding those answers involves crossing over to faith, because most of the time using it to honor the Lord is often a step of faith. I can also tell you that it's usually, that it also, it can be done, is so often in conjunction with crossing over to community. You say, how do you know that, Tim? Because if I'm not using it to bless some community, whether it's this community or some community of people outside this building, then I'm using it selfishly. Now, that doesn't mean that if you come and sit down that with some of us that we're going to be answering all your questions, because God's the only one with all the questions, the answers to those things. Now, you may be here today or watching online, and you're wondering what you have, what you can do, what you can use to honor the Lord today, and you're struggling with that in your own mind and your own heart. Can I tell you that today I want to pray for you if you're finding yourself in that moment? If you find yourself in that place. In my years in the church, one of the other things I do discover, and when we begin talking about these things, is sometimes people know what they should do. They know what gift they have, but they don't have the courage to use it. And if that's you today, then I want to pray for you too. And in that, sometimes we've gotten so used to this gift that we don't have the courage to pick up the next one that Jesus is, and let this one sit idle for a little while, because Jesus is trying to do something new in us. if you're in that spot, I mean, golly, can I tell you that it's really hard sometimes. It's even harder when we start talking about honoring the Lord with our gift if it's somewhere outside of the building. Because out there, number one, people may not want God honored, and number two, they certainly would rather you use their gift according to their plan, not according to God's plan. And if you find that turmoil in your heart today, and I want to pray for you. I want to pray for you. I mean, I remember the personal conflict of stepping away from the dream of doing music and saying, okay, Jesus, what is it you want? And those day-to-day choices that I still have to do today, that I still have right now. And you might find yourself in that place today, and I want to pray for you. Now, you could be here or watching online, and you say, I'm not even sure that I'm a follower of Jesus. And you're talking about all this other stuff, and I think I would like to do that, but I'm not even sure that he knows me, because I'm not sure I know him. I definitely want to pray for you today then. I definitely want to pray for you. You know, the first and the greatest way that we can ever honor God is by choosing to follow Jesus. It's that. Jesus set an example for us by honoring God with his life. And the Bible says that, like most of us, he didn't always want to walk the road. Even though he was the Son of God. Yeah, I think about Jesus, and you realize that yes, this culmination of all of his purpose. He says, well, they asked him, why'd you come? And he said, to seek and save the lost. Now, we know that culminates in the cross and the resurrection. But would we believe in the cross and the resurrection without the walking on the water? Without the water turned to wine? Because our purpose isn't about one moment in time. It's about using our gifts, doing what the Lord's asking us to do, and honoring him for the whole thing. And if you're in that place where you go, well, I know what Jesus would want, and I'm not sure I want to do it. Well, he was there, and he understands. But he also showed us that the greatest blessing, the greatest victories in life are on the other side of the hard things. Jesus' road led to the cross and a brutal death to eternally pay for our mistakes and our failures. And the door to forgiveness, the door to loving eternal relationship was open because of that sacrifice. His greatest gift to us was that. His death and his resurrection, his life of living the purpose of God. And today, above everything else, if you're watching online or you're here, I encourage you to choose Jesus. Choose Jesus. Would you guys bow your heads for a moment? Now, if you're here, you're watching online today, and you would like to take that step that would honor God more than any other, more than anything else, and become a follower, then I want to pray for you. If you're watching online, I'd love you to just go down to the comments section and type in the words choosing Jesus so we know how to pray for you. But if you're here in the room and you say, I want to become a follower of Jesus, maybe for the first time, and maybe for the first time in a long time, then I encourage you, just take a little step this morning and just wave at me, look up, make eye contact with me, just so I know who I'm praying for. That's what I'm asking this morning. Now, if you're here in the room and you're struggling with one of the other questions, do I have gifts? How do I honor the Lord with my gifts? What kind of purpose? I don't know. You're struggling with the faith or the boldness to move into your gift or to do the thing that Jesus is asking you to do. Man, do I want to pray for you today also. And I want to ask you to do the same thing. If you're here in the room this morning and you feel that challenge in your heart, then I want to ask you just quickly glance up, make eye contact, or wave at me so I know who I'm praying for. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Jesus, you lived a life of purpose. You modeled a life of purpose. And now you ask us to do it. First of all, Lord, for those who are saying, I want to choose you. Lord, settle in their heart the confidence that your word says that that if we believe in faith that you are the Son of God and you died and rose from again, that we will be born again, that we will be followers of. And Lord, so today, give that confidence to those in that position, in that situation. And Lord, today I would also, Lord, across the room there are people who have this moment of using their gift, and they're facing one of hundreds of challenges in that. First of all, Lord, I pray, as we prayed before service, for clarity to see, hear, and understand what the gift is for this season, in this moment, in this time. Give clarity. Hallelujah. Of the best way to honor you. Not just honor you with the gift on the Crossing Place property, but for many of these gifts, the best way to honor you in that secular environment, in that family environment, in that recreational environment. And Lord, then I pray for the boldness. Lord, the courage to do what you ask. Jesus, in the garden, you said to the Father, I don't want, is there any other way? And Lord, I know that in our hearts sometimes we're saying the same thing, and you're saying to us that this is the way. So Lord, I pray for the courage, the strength, the boldness to take the things you speak in clarity and help us to cross over in faith, community, and purpose to use those things and those gifts, whatever they might be, to honor you. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, thanks again for coming today. And if you made a decision to become a follower of Jesus, would you see Darlene or Amos or myself and let us take 60 seconds to celebrate this moment with you? And don't forget about midweek. We'll be here at 7. And if you're interested in being baptized, please remember, sign up. Use the QR code, sign up sheet. There was one run out here. Talk to me, talk to one of us, and we'll want to talk to you. Guys, next week, we're going to wrap up the Crossing Over series by talking about another aspect of crossing over to faith. So invite your unchurched friends this week. Have a great week as you cross over to purpose and use your gifts to honor the Lord. Amen.